Welcome to COIQ, where you learn how health innovators maximize their success. I'm your host, Dr. Roxy, founder of Legacy DNA and international best-selling author of How Health Innovators Maximize Market Success. Through candid conversations with health innovators, early adopters, and influencers, you'll learn how to bring your innovation from idea to startup to market domination. And now, let's jump into the latest episode of COIQ.
Welcome back to the show, COIQ listeners. On today's episode, I have David Pearlstone with DICOM Director with us. Welcome to the show, David.
Thanks so much, Roxy. A pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you. So let's talk about what in the heck is going on.
A lot going on. It's a crazy time. As a physician myself, although I'm not in clinical practice anymore, it's really what's the right word? I don't know. Amazing. I don't know. Extraordinary, unusual, once in a lifetime experiences. Obviously not a positive experience, but you can't help but take a moment to step back and realize you're living history.
Strange.
And that's always interesting, and there's a lot to be said for people who can gain or obtain perspective in crisis situations and see a bit beyond the immediate crisis, see patterns, see trends, see why things are happening, see what could possibly happen next. I find that very interesting.
Yeah. So for our listeners that don't know who you are, give us a little brief bit about your background and what is DICOM and what are you guys doing?
Sure, thanks. DICOM Director is a platform. It's a software as a service platform to basically meet the challenges of the current generation of medical imaging. So this all has to do with digital imaging in healthcare, X-rays. So all X-rays these days are done are digital. The problem is, even though they are digital, we do not do a very good job of handling them, storing them, moving them around, giving patients access to their own information. So we have this treasure trove of information in a fairly simple format, a digital format, easy to store, easy to move around. And yet we are still using antiquated techniques to do that, like printing them on CDs and things like that. Mm-hmm. The other component to our business that we do with these exciting new generation of images is that we create three-dimensional holographic images from any standard CAT scan or MRI. So it's a bit of a fascinating background concept if you can take a moment to talk about that. The way that CAT scans are done today, as of about the year 2000, is what's called a helical CT. And what that means is that the patient on the gantry moves at the same time that the donut moves around them. The way we used to do it was the donut went around, patient moved. Donut went around, patient moved. Right? Now the patient moves and the donut moves at the same time. So rather than getting slices of information, what we now create is a continual helical stream of data. That's why it's called a helical CT. So there is no more slices. It's actually a continual three-dimensional data set that's being obtained. The problem is we don't have mechanisms to view three-dimensional images up until recently. So ever since the year 2000 that we've developed helical CT, we have been looking at CAT scans probably revealing less than 70% of the information that is actually there, because we've had to artificially slice them up into slices, because all we have is two-dimensional television screens to look at these things on. Well, now that the world has developed augmented reality and virtual reality devices that allow true three-dimensional visualizations, we have developed software that can take that exact data set, same data that's there. We're not doing anything to it, not manipulating it in any way. All we're doing is now reconstructing it rather into sliced two-dimensional images, creating a true three-dimensional image. And again, when you view this on a augmented reality, virtual reality device, it's rather phenomenal. So that's a good lead into who am I. I spent my life as a surgeon, surgical oncologist. Ended up going to business school in 2008, which was a tremendous, wonderful experience. Opened my eyes to all sorts of insights that I just did not have as a physician. And as a sidebar, I would encourage anybody, here's an interesting sidebar for the times. A lot of discussion right now, a lot of anger, a lot of animosity on the front lines of healthcare workers. And justified, it's a very crazy, difficult situation. I came up medically during the era of HIV. I can relate to a large degree of what it's like to fear that you may actually die from the job that you're doing. But what concerns me is seeing this a lot of complaining, a lot of backbiting towards the administration of the hospitals by the clinical people. And so here's my answer to that. Yeah, that's right. Healthcare belongs to the clinicians. Take it back. Go to business school. Learn how to do the business, because you cannot run a hospital with an MD. Trust me, take it from me. You can't. It's much more complicated than that. Go and learn and take back the industry. So that's my sidebar, because a lot of people are upset. A lot of clinicians are upset about what's happening on the front lines with personal protective equipment and all of these kinds of things. And then there's a lot of complaining and sentiment that the big bad CEOs are sitting in their mansions in Florida while the front line is out there dying. And I'm not arguing one way or the other. All I'm saying is, I hear you and I agree, and I felt that way much of my career, and that's why I went to business school, because I felt I could do as good or better a job running the system as these people who had no clinical insight. So again, maybe a bit of a hidden silver lining here, that more clinical, and I don't just mean doctors, a respiratory therapist, nurses, anybody. You've lived your life in healthcare. You see the front line. You see the clinical things. You understand the basis of the business, okay? You need to go learn some business skills, and then you can run the business. I say it, it's like the truck drivers can't run the trucking company, okay? And I hate to say it, but that's pretty analogous to the way it is in medicine, okay? We're the truck drivers, and there are people who own the trucking company. If you want to run the trucking company, you have to be a bit more than a truck driver. You're going to have to learn about running the company as well. And you can, and many trucking companies are owned and run by truck drivers. And that's the way it should be. Okay, enough on that crazy topic.
Well, I think that's just a great segue into, this phenomenon that I see happening, is that there are a lot of physicians, clinicians, healthcare professionals that, like you said, they're on the front lines. They see the problems. They have an idea of how to solve it, right? Because they're in it all day, every day. They see the patterns of what happened, and they're like, I can solve this. And so you're seeing an influx of physician innovators and nurse innovators that are happening, right? So maybe not necessarily being the CEO of the system, but creating their own company and innovating their own solutions. Right?
Absolutely another way to go. I absolutely firmly believe necessity is the mother of invention. And to your point, or getting back to this interesting issue of the interesting things that come out of crisis situations, you're right. Paired ventilators right now, there's something that's not going to go away. This idea of using one ventilator for two patients. By the way, if you told me that a year ago, I'd have laughed in your face. That's the craziest idea I've ever heard. That makes no sense whatsoever. But it turns out it does make sense. I actually still don't understand how they're going to do that, but it makes sense. That's not going to go away. We will still use that technology, and some smart person is going to start a company that makes these things, and someone's going to make a lot of money doing that. And that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. I get into a lot of discussions about healthcare and the profit motive. It's a very interesting discussion about the role of the profit motive in healthcare. There's a strong argument that all healthcare should be not for profit, because why should people make money off of other people's illness or wellness? Absolutely valid point. On the other hand, we've seen over and over again, how many lessons do we need that the best motivator for success is the profit motive. That is what drives companies. That's what drives innovation, honestly, I'm afraid to say. So I think it's a very, very interesting discussion. But getting back to the issue of where's this silver linings in this? So telemedicine absolutely is a perfect example of that. And so here's the interesting thing I would point out about telemedicine. It's not like we invented it last week. Telemedicine's been around for quite some time. And the advocates for telemedicine are certainly quite happy that their business is taking off now. Well, first, let me just make this point. It's not going to go away. I think we all get that
Right.
This is the fascinating part. When this is all over, and it will be over, okay, there will come a day when this is past us. I can promise you that. I never finished telling my story of who I am, but at any rate, when this is over, there are things that will persist, and telemedicine will be one of them, because basically what we're finding out is 40% of the time that we go to the doctor, we actually don't really have to go to the doctor. We could just talk on the phone. Works perfectly well. And, I anticipate, in my view, this is going to be a win-win-win-win-win, okay, which is hard to come by anywhere in the world and certainly in healthcare. But let's think about this advocacy for telemedicine, okay? The providers like it. It's a far more efficient use of their time, right? We hear providers say all the time, they get, the way the system is set, they get 15 minutes, okay? They can't possibly deal with the patient in 15 minutes. Well, a lot of the telemedicine stuff you can do in 15 minutes. So it's far more efficient. It's an easier life for them, right? There's no back and forth to the office. I mean, just think you could set up your life as a doctor where half a day a week, you just work from home doing telemedicine calls. So practitioners are going to like it, and particularly now that Medicare has agreed to reimburse for it, right? And by the way, they won't go backwards. That's just sort of a principle. Once they give something, it's very hard to take it back. Mm-hmm. So that reimbursement for telemedicine will persist. So practitioners are going to love it. Insurance people are going to love it, because it's a much cheaper way to get their patients seen. It's far more efficient. They're not, the insurance company's not losing anything. If anything, they're gaining. They're happy about it. Government's happy because, everybody's getting better health care. And ultimately, I know it will save money for the system by reducing all of these visits. So CMS is going to be happy, and the patient's going to be happy, because it's super easy to just sit there and do this and blah, blah, rather than get in your car, sit in the waiting room and all of those other things. So I think it's going to persist, and I think that's fascinating. So go back to my life story. So after I graduated from business school, I went into healthcare administration, was running a division and running a department and a chunk of a hospital. And then through odd happenstance, I actually ended up in the entrepreneur ecosystem. There's a term that I've come to love. I didn't like that word before, but it really is the best term for this, that there truly is an entrepreneurial startup ecosystem, particularly in New Haven, where we are very, very strong, supportive group of entrepreneurs and startups. And that's really important, I think. I think we would have a much harder time doing this if we weren't in such a supportive environment. So many other startups, many of the support systems that a startup needs, law firms, accounting firms, services, things like that, that are very happy to volunteer their time for free and help out startups and things like that. It's just a great environment. And so I wandered into this world somewhat accidentally. And then about a year and a half ago, I met my current partner, Ted and Ani, and they had come to pitch this company. I was working at an incubator, a healthcare incubator, and they had come to pitch the company. And I was so blown away by it. This is a great founder story. I always want to have a good founder story. I was vetting companies for a incubator, and they came in and showed this technology of creating holograms from CAT scans, and I was so blown away, because I used to say this literally, and I now say this all the time in our fundraising pitches, that I really would be standing in the operating room. I used to specialize in liver surgery, a very complicated, dangerous operation, and I'm doing the operation, and during the operation, you'd look at the CAT scan a few times, refer to it. And to do that, I was looking at a piece of plastic held up in front of a light bulb, literally. I mean, in an operating room in the year 2020, and here's a piece of plastic put up in front of an incandescent light bulb. And meanwhile, literally at that very same moment, my children were at home at 4 o'clock in the afternoon playing video games that had holographic heads-up displays and all this stuff with voice commands, and I'm looking at plastic in front of a light bulb, and that just drove me nuts as a clinician. And we could have a really long discussion about why that is, why things are like that in healthcare. But here was a guy who came in and showed me exactly what I'd been fantasizing about. So 2 weeks later, I quit the company, quit the incubator, and he offered me to be CEO of the company. So that's where we are now. Here we are a year and a half later. The company had been in existence for a while already. We're out raising money. We are in the market. We are selling. So there's a lot happening. And again, this is sort of an exciting time for us, I think. These are interesting times for healthcare innovation. It's a fun time to be in this area, in the area of innovation. It's a very exciting, cool area to be in. It's a lot more fun than being a surgeon, I can tell you that. It is. And people are extraordinarily generous. That's one thing that I'm so struck by in this world of this ecosystem. Continually, I cannot tell you how often this happens. People will come and just volunteer their information, their time, their knowledge, their support, their connections, for no reason, just other than to be nice because they like what you're doing and whatever. You don't see that very much in medicine. You don't see that in surgery, I tell you that. And that's happened to us a lot. We're very grateful. We have many of what we call friends of DICOM that they're nothing, just that they're nice people and they're entrepreneurs too, and they like what we're doing, and they'll do stuff, show us stuff, introduce us to people. And I can't say enough about how much I love the spirit of this world. It's encouraging.
So David, that's exactly why I do what I do. My purpose and my mission is to help innovators like you get their innovations in the hands of the people that need them the most. And so having these kind of conversations where we can inspire and we can encourage other innovators, or we can share strategies and tactics to help them, move forward in progress. I mean, it's going to take a village. And, I think what's so fascinating is we're talking about, like you mentioned, innovation in healthcare is very different than innovation in other industries. Lives are at stake. And, it's not just like the lives of the people over there. It's like our family, or it even could be ourselves. And so, I want to help you be successful because it's the right thing to do. And I want to fix the broken system, but I also want to help you be successful because, gosh, my family might be on that surgery table one day. And the physician like you might need to have that augmented reality 3D how do you say that? Anatomical view,
yeah.
Right? And so it's like there's a lot of value in us doing the right thing and making a difference and improving our healthcare ecosystem.
I believe that. I obviously, maybe not obviously, I believe that to my core. It's an interesting question. I admire your optimistic view of the world. I think that there is and I'm not taking anything away from what you said, completely agree. I think there are a lot of people that, I know this because I've seen it directed at me. They view this to some degree as the dark side. You're not taking care of patients anymore. You sold out to industry, all sorts of views, and take it with a grain of salt. It has to do with something you and I have talked about before. I am a very big believer in maximizing your potential and maximizing your contribution to our society. It's just my personal view. I think we have an obligation. I think you have an obligation to do your best, not for you, for the world. Yeah. If God gave you a skill, if he made you the world's best basket maker, and you can make a basket better than anybody else, you have to do that. That's your job. That's your skill. That's what you're there to contribute. I mean, unless you hate doing it, in which case you don't have to. But if you've got that skill, pursue it and do it. And so I think this extends in healthcare that it's not, here's the statement, it's not enough to just be the doctor. If you have insights into how the system could or should work better, or why what you're doing as a clinician is frustrating, and you've got some insight about how to fix it, go and fix it. Don't be the person sitting in the grandstand complaining and booing and griping and all of those things. You're the smart one. You go fix it. Go fix it.
Yeah. Get in the ring.
Get in the ring and do it. Absolutely. I'm a big believer in that, and particularly in healthcare. As you get older in your career, how can I say this? I don't want to say, you might get bored, but you get to be a certain age, you've been doing the same thing in medicine for a very long time, it perhaps can lose some of its day-to-day fascination. That's the time to go discover where your healthcare skills can bring tremendous value to somebody else in another industry. This is my Life 2.0 theory. I think that this cross-fertilization of experienced professionals is brilliant, and that's the way we're going to solve problems. Take someone who's been a doctor for 30 years and go plop them in the business world, and I bet you they're going to come up with interesting ideas, and vice versa. So I love this idea of you've gotten to be pretty expert in your field, but you have frustrations about some component about the way it works. Well, don't give up just because you're like, well, I'm the doctor. I don't run healthcare. Well, of course you can. Go get the tools, get the cred. You need the cred. That's the other thing, and doctors are as guilty of this as anybody. We figure, well, we can do anything, which may be true. Maybe you can do anything, but you got to get the paperwork. You got to get the cred. Just walking in the boardroom and going, I know how to fix this. No one's going to believe you. Just like if you were somebody and walked into a room full of doctors and said, I know how to do this, all the doctors would look at you like, that's crazy. Why would you think you'd know how to do it? You've never done this before. It's the same thing. They're not going to take your answer about how to fix the emergency room because they've been doing it their whole lives. And you can't just walk in and go, I know how to fix it. Because trust me, you're going to go to school and learn about fixing it. What you're going to find is it's a lot more complicated than you think. So anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
Going off on a tangent.
The cred, the education, that's really important. I have been helping, business owners for, almost 2 decades, and went back to school and got my doctorate in business. And I learned a boatload of stuff that I didn't know before, even being in the trenches for 15 years. Yeah. And so it's like, you never stop learning.
Absolutely. And what I found, my personal experience in business school, which I absolutely loved. Going to business school as an adult was just a tremendously wonderful experience. Was from my colleagues. I loved having my arrogant surgeon mind changed by quiet, truth-speaking people from the pharma industry. Needless to say, plenty of opinions about pharma and everything from the clinicians, and with an attitude from the clinicians of, and of course we're right. There's no doubt that we are correct. And very quickly you are told that, no, you see it from your point of view. Let's look at someone who is just as smart as you, but they spent their life in the pharmaceutical industry with a little bit different approach to things. They're going to explain something to you that you never got before. You think you get it. You think you do, but you don't.
Right.
And you need, I needed to be, and many of us need to be put in our place about what we think we know about how things run and how to run something. I've got plenty of opinions about the pharmaceutical industry, for sure. But I will say one thing. They're not stupid. They're definitely not stupid. And they're not evil. That's the other thing. We can go off on this whole subject about evil. I truly do not believe they are evil. This is another thing about going to business school that people have to wrap their heads around, that this is a capitalist society. And until the day that somebody passes the law that pharmaceuticals are not for profit, they're a for-profit business. They have one and only one obligation: make money for your stockholders. That's their only obligation. Now, they may write a company mission about do good for the world, but that's the company mission statement. Okay. That's not their job. Their job, make money for the stockholders. And guess what? If they do not make money for the stockholders, they can be the greatest human beings on earth. They're doing super wonderful, save the world work, and they don't make money for the stockholders. Guess what happens? You're fired.
Yeah.
And then all your good work that you were doing for the world ain't gonna happen because you're fired. So
it reminds me a quote that you said the last time we spoke, that change equals opportunity.
Absolutely. Change is a code word. Change is just a code word for opportunity. Anytime you hear the word change, get excited. Get excited.
Hey, it's Dr. Roxy here with a quick break from the conversation. Are you trying to figure out what moves you need to make to survive and thrive in the new COVID economy? I want every health innovator to find their most viable and profitable pivot strategy, which is why I created the COVID Proof Your Business Pivot Kit. The Pivot Kit is a step-by-step framework that helps you find your best pivot strategy. It walks you through 6 categories you need to examine for a 360-degree view of your business. I call them the 6 critical pivot lenses. As you make your way through this comprehensive kit, you'll be armed with the tools, tips, and strategies you need to make sure you can pivot with speed without missing out on critical details and opportunities. Learn more at legacy-dna.com/kit.
So you and I were talking about how excited we are about this time. And, I'll just be transparent and say that I'm having to kind of temper some of my excitement. And I'm excited about everything that's happening. There's some really bad, terrible, horrific things.
Sure.
Right? People are dying. People are getting sick. I mean, people are losing their jobs.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you mentioned, and I completely agree with you, that there's a lot of silver linings. There's a lot of opportunity in the changes that are happening. So let's just talk about what is it like for a healthcare innovator right now? What are some of the opportunities that are peppered in here, just in general, and then for DICOM, and kind of what do you think that is going to be for you going forward when we get beyond the COVID crisis?
Sure. So yes, change, absolutely, totally agree with that. Change is just a code for opportunity. A couple of thoughts on that. When I was in business school, and I've said this to so many people lately, we learned this concept of economic shock. So the concept of an economic shock is the idea that some event occurs, and it could be a fairly innocuous event, but the point is it ripples through the economies of the globe. And so the joke we used to make was, there's an earthquake in Mexico, the price of wheat falls in Russia. Why? I don't know, but it does, because there's an intricate mechanism. So that's what's happening here now. This is an economic shock. Also, I'll go ahead and make a prediction, a positive prediction for your listeners, and I hope I'm right. I make no claims to being a genius, but it seems to me that I think that this is not going to be a long-standing economic hardship, and I will say, or let me put it this way, why this is not analogous to 2008 or 1929. Okay, because those events occurred due to problems with the underlying economy. Right. And that's why those things happened. Our economy is quite strong and stable, relatively strong and stable. The things that are happening it is inevitable that they will impact the economy. These things are happening not because of problems with the economy itself. They're happening because of external economic shocks. So I predict, excuse me, that when the medical issues of the disease have passed, which 6 months or so, I'm guessing, the economic recovery will be fairly swift. Things will go maybe not back exactly where they were, but pretty close to it. And I think that will happen fairly quickly again, because the reasons for the economy are all still good, or the underpinnings are still solid. So we have had economic disasters in the past because the economics were a disaster. Right. Economics are a disaster now. This is an external force. So I think everything's going to be okay. What's it like to be an entrepreneur right now? Well, it's a bit nerve-wracking because we are still in the fundraising component of our company. We're still looking for investors. We have some, but we're looking for further investment. So that's, when you're a startup, that's you live and die by that. That's all I eat, sleep, and drink is, investors. And obviously, not surprisingly, everybody just shut down temporarily. Everyone's trying to figure out what's going on. So the first reaction, everybody just went to bed for 2 weeks. So we had pitch meetings canceled. It is very, like a meeting you've worked on for months to get, and all of a sudden, sorry, we don't know what to do. So that's been hard. But as the dust has settled, and the dust is settling a bit, now is when the opportunities are being realized, and I think that investors are getting over it. And what's going to happen now, I believe. So articles have been written that venture capital money kind of dried up a little bit in the short term. I think there will be a very big boom in VC cash output sometime in the next 6 months based on the innovations that are coming out of the crisis. People are going to see some telemedicine companies. I don't know particular anyone running one, but I imagine it's a pretty hot time right now for telemedicine companies that are looking for investors. I would think smart investors are snatching them up pretty rapidly. So again, as you said, every crisis is an opportunity. So here's an opportunity for investors. Here's an opportunity for entrepreneurs to push their product. And what in particular, well, again, I think we had referenced earlier, in this particular crisis, anything that promotes, well, to be honest, in my opinion, anything that promotes a more efficient medical system. That's a bit of an overstatement. Really what it means is eliminating much of the face-to-face that we use in medicine. So again, a little bit of a sidebar. Telemedicine. How can we do telemedicine? You can't examine the patient. How can you possibly evaluate a patient without touching them? That, let me tell you, I went to med school in 1989. That is heresy. Heresy.
Right.
And guess what, though? Now, all these articles are being written, and it's actually been quite a few years now that it's been this sort of dirty little secret that people don't want to say, physical exams overrated. There's really nothing, between looking at them and telling them, like, look down at your leg. Is it still there? Right. That kind of thing. Is you can get through huge amounts. So there is an example of a really fundamental principle of medicine is going to change because of this. And I think that's fascinating. And anytime there's change, that's opportunity. Here's something we haven't even talked about: wearables. Okay, so wearable healthcare technology. Think about how that's going to tie in. Now, if my shirt can send my vital signs to the doctor, I want to be in that shirt company, because now people are going to, why do I do? Hey, do you know how many people go to the doctor just to get their blood pressure checked? That's like ridiculous. Why? Right. Why, you to get your prescription refilled to get your blood pressure checked. I can't do that over the phone with you. It's ridiculous. So
how many times I'm taking family members to the doctor so they can get their prescription refilled.
Right. So here's another. So again, to get down into the nitty gritty, my wife's a clinician. She's an OBGYN. So one of the things for most clinicians that's, an annoyance is people can game the system because they will call knowing that it's after hours. And because normally a doctor does not want to refill a prescription over the phone. Right. Now, I'll give you the medical reason, then I'll give you the real reason. The medical reason, well, because when you're refilling a prescription, you should talk to the patient and see how they're doing and check their things and make sure it's appropriate to refill a prescription. Okay, here's the real reason. If we just refill it over the phone, I'm never going to make any money, okay? Because I don't charge you for refilling your prescription over the phone. So if you're my long-term patient, right? If you're my patient that I've been seeing for 10 years for your high blood pressure, and I make you come in 3 times a year just so that I can refill. If I didn't make you come in, I would only see you maybe once a year, and that doesn't make me feel good as the doctor who's taking. Anyway, so the idea is the patients have known this for a long time, that to avoid being told, well, you have to come in if you want your prescription refilled, they figured it out. They call after hours, because then there is no, it's like, well, you got to fill their prescription. It's after hours. They need the medicine, you know,
Right,
they're going to
right.
go. And so, you know, the people are sort of gaming the system, but now all that's going to go away, because, you know, my wife is like, you know what? Now people are, because what's happening is people are calling the office and going, I just need my prescription refilled. And the office is going, no problem. We'll give you a telemedicine appointment.
Yeah.
Like, oh no, I just need my prescription refilled. Oh no, that's all this is. It's just a phone call to tell them. But guess what? Now the physician can bill for that visit.
Right.
So it's fascinating, the little nitty gritty about how this is a good thing. This is a good thing for healthcare. Now the doctors are really upset. Oh, I'm losing all these office visits because, you know, people just call in and they want their prescriptions refilled, or they just want their question answered over the phone. Like, oh, you know, it burns when I urinate. I think I have a urinary tract infection. Can you just call me in a prescription? Well, that really should be a doctor visit. I mean, let's face it, you're calling in, they're going to treat you, and there's no billing for that. That's it. You called, there's no bill. Well, that's a little unfair.
Right.
So now it's like, okay, no, everything is a telemedicine visit. So again, I think, who knew that this was going to solve an interesting billing quandary for healthcare providers? My wife's very happy now. She's like, it's great. No more people calling in just to get their prescriptions refilled after hours. Everyone's told, nope, you got to make a telemedicine appointment.
So the awareness, right? So the awareness of the technology. So telehealth or telemedicine, you know, there's a certain maybe a certain awareness of that, maybe more so than like artificial intelligence in healthcare. What's that? Or virtual reality and augmented reality in healthcare. What's that? But when I think we're thrust as a whole into the greater adoption of these technologies that have been available for a while, that there's a certain, like you said, we don't come back from that awareness.
Right.
Now all of a sudden it doesn't seem so foreign. And I've kind of had a taste of its convenience, its scalability, its efficiency.
That's a good way to put it. I like it. I've had a little taste of its convenience and its scalability, and I like it.
Yeah.
That's very true. That's exactly, that's perfectly said. I agree. You got a little taste, and it tastes good. And the great thing is, it tastes good to everybody. That's the funny thing. You know, usually it's like, oh, it tastes good to one person. This tastes good to the doctor, the patient, the insurance company. Everybody likes this.
Right.
That is a rarity in medicine. You know, I think about when we talk about, and please redirect me. I could talk for a long time about this stuff. I think this is fascinating, these issues. You know, we talk about innovation in healthcare and adoption and how things happen. And so in this case, a very valid technology is being pushed due to an external economic shock. That's interesting. Let's look at one that didn't happen that way, laparoscopy. Okay, so not too many people realize, people seem to think that laparoscopy was invented in like the 1990s, late 80s, early 90s, which is when we started doing it, right? That's when we started doing laparoscopic cholecystectomy. Well, the reality is laparoscopy was invented in the 1930s, okay? Gynecologists had been doing laparoscopy forever.
Yeah.
And they had always been looking at general surgeons like, I don't know why you guys are doing that crazy big incision, man. We do stuff with little teeny tiny incisions. I don't know what you guys are doing. Why? For 30 years. Didn't penetrate.
Bars.
Couldn't get in. And then all of a sudden, one day, I don't know why. I mean, there are papers have been written as to why, but all of a sudden it caught. And then what happened? We went from zero. You went from never heard of that operation to, oh my God, I better be doing 10 a week, right? Yeah. Now, contrast that with robotics, okay? So here is robotics, which was the exact mirror image, in my opinion, which is to say, it didn't actually provide any advantage. It just was fancier, okay? Whereas laparoscopy provided a huge advantage and wasn't fancy. It already existed, and we resisted that. Now here comes something that's super fancy, which means expensive, complicated, and didn't actually really have any reason why it was better. And to this day, people still struggle to prove why robotic surgeries are better. And yet, there was none of this 30-year lag for that to be implemented. Within 2 years, hospitals went from don't even know what a robot is to have to have one. And how many of those have to have one? It sits in a corner with lab coats hanging on it because nobody uses it. I'm just fascinated by these things, why some things take off for good reasons, others take off for wrong reasons, some things don't take off even though there's good reasons. So I'm fascinated by the whole
So
thing.
on this show, we talk a lot about the technology adoption curve, right? And
Yeah.
those first few segments of the market, those innovators, early adopters.
Yep.
And, Jeffrey Moore wrote a book on crossing the chasm. And then you've got those other two segments, the early majority, the late majority. And, health innovators in the trenches, trying to get through that adoption curve. And then you have like what you called as economic shock. That's like, whoo. I wonder, how I cannot wait to explore over the next few months and the few years of how this has impacted that technology adoption curve. How many innovators are in the trenches just beating their head up against the wall trying to cross the chasm.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden they're shooting across the chasm like a freaking rocket.
And nobody can understand why.
Right.
Yesterday, I was a poor schlub nobody ever heard of. Now I'm like being interviewed on CNN, and I've invented the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Yes. Yeah. Can we figure out that secret to success, and can we manufacture that for everyone, to be able to get their innovations of the hands of the people that need them the most?
Actually, when you figure it out, I'm in. Let me know.
All right, let's do it. So David, I get the same impression that you, like, we are so passionate about these topics. We could talk for days, and I want to spare our listeners that for this particular episode.
Good idea.
We can always do another one. So as we wrap up here, what wisdom, lessons learned, advice do you have for fellow health innovators that are in the trenches right now?
Oof, well, far be it from me to give advice. I'm much better at receiving advice. Don't give up. There's a million corny expressions, but I got to say they're all true in our kind of way. It's always darkest before the dawn. You got to fail 5 times before you're going to succeed. All those things, it's all true. It's so true. It's true. Don't. I have terrible days. Believe me. I wake up some days and go, "What am I doing? Oh my God! Can I go back to the operating room?" Whatever. And other days I wake up just absolutely excited about what's going to happen. Hang on to those good days. Don't let the bad days overwhelm you. If you're an entrepreneur, you're an innovator in healthcare, I'm guessing you're a pretty clever person, because you didn't get there without being that way. And if you're that clever, hang in there, man. Hang in there. Just remember, Jeff Bezos didn't make a profit for 20 years, and he's now the richest man in the world.
Can you say that again, David? Our listeners need to hear that twice.
Amazon did not make a profit for 20 years. 20 years. He lived beg, borrow, and steal, man. That's it. Here, well, let's finish. You can finish up with this. This is one of my, I'm a big fan of Jeff Bezos. I don't know anything about him personally. I may be a complete schmuck, but his business founder story is a great story. And this is probably one of the most important things that speaks to me. So yeah, he was interviewed some years ago about how it was that he decided to start Amazon. Most people may not even remember Amazon started off selling books. It was the whole thing was about online books. It had nothing to do with yogurt. So anyway, books. And so he was working on Wall Street. He was just a Wall Street guy. And he very quickly realized, as did many, many millions of other people, that the idea of digital books made sense. It just seemed to make sense. Just, talking in the early 80s. And it's like, yeah, that makes sense. Well, he didn't. A million of people thought up that idea. But here's what he said. He said, somebody's going to do this. Somebody's going to create the digital book platform, create selling books online. And I do not want to be the guy 5 years from now still sitting here in my Wall Street office going, damn, I could have done that. I thought of that. Why didn't I do that? So that's what I call my Jeff Bezos moments.
Yeah.
This is a Jeff Bezos moment. Don't miss your Jeff Bezos moment. Don't be the guy who 2 years from now when this is all over, looks back and go, yeah, I thought I thought about telemedicine and I had a whole great thing going, but I don't know. Couldn't get around to it. Didn't think it would work. I didn't have the self-confidence. Whatever it is your reason, you just didn't do it. But now here you are 2 years later and you're looking at somebody else who did do it.
Yeah.
The person who did do it, here's my message. They're no better than you are.
Yeah.
They're not better. They're just maybe a little, ballsier. Something. But they're not better. They're not better.
Resilient. You know, this is a knockdown that a lot of us are facing, and we just have to continue to get back up. That's what I hear you saying. Get back up.
Have faith, have confidence. If you see that trend, if you see that Kindle happening, and you know in your heart it's going to happen. This is how I feel, and honestly, this is why I'm in what we do. I know in my heart we will use holograms in medicine. I know I could be wrong. Very possible I'm wrong. And if I'm wrong, my whole thing goes out the window and I admit defeat and go home. But I am so sure of this that I kind of don't care. I mean, I'm so sure this is going to work that all I got to do is just find my way around, man. Just hang in there. Just do it. Just do the best I can to hang in there, because I know this is going to be a thing. And so that's all you got to do is then just, if you have confidence in your business plan, in your idea, all you got to do is stay in the game.
Amen. So David, how can our listeners get a hold of you if they have questions for you?
Well, here's my home address. Please, I'm very, very reachable anytime. But my email, david.pearlstone@dicomdirector.com. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. And DICOM Director is on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. We're on everything. We have our website, www.dicomdirector.com, which I apologize, it's not very good right now, but we're working on it. It's going to get better in the next couple of weeks. But again, please, david.pearlstone@dicomdirector.com, or just info@dicomdirector.com, and I'll get it. And I really love to talk, as you can see. So, and I love entrepreneurs and I love sharing experience. So please, anybody reach out. I love it. And if you're in the New Haven area, sometime in the future, not now, please come by where we are. Again, we work in a really tremendous space in New Haven, Connecticut called District, which is founded by a guy named David Salinas, who's a tremendous entrepreneur. And it's just a really cool entrepreneur space. So if you're ever around, please come by and visit after all this.
Thank you so much, David. Appreciate your time today.
Thanks, Roxy. Really a pleasure. We'll talk soon.
Thank you so much for listening. I know you're busy working to bring your life-changing innovation to market, and I value your time and your attention. To save time and get the latest episodes on your mobile device automatically, subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher. Thank you for listening, and I appreciate everyone who's been sharing the show with friends and colleagues. See you on the next episode of COIQ.